Hi, and welcome to Common Denominator, straight up conversations with me, Moshe Popack. Each week I chat with pioneers, innovators, and truly inspirational people to learn the steps they take to turn their ideas into reality. My goal is to empower you to dive in, be bold, and take profound steps toward realizing your own potential. Joining me this week is 23-year-old powerhouse Pavlina Osta, who hosted her own radio show at age 11. Pavlina is a podcast host, a social media influencer, and the author of the Amazon bestseller, 20 Things Every Motivated 20-Something Should Know. She'll deliver expert tips on how millennials and Gen Zers can thrive in today's world. Next.
This is Common Denominator, straight up conversations with Moshe Popack. Now, here's Moshe.
Hi, Pavlina. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on, Moshe. I'm excited.
So, Pavlina, you're the author of the Amazon bestseller, 20 Things Every Motivated 20-Something Should Know. So what inspired you to write the book?
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm so proud of the book. It's doing really well. And, in the first couple of months, it did become an Amazon bestseller. I noticed that a lot of millennials and Gen Zs were struggling where it comes to, they struggle with the imposter syndrome, how they talk to themselves, negative self-talk, all of those like self-limiting beliefs that we sort of impose on ourselves, a lot of depression and anxiety. And I noticed this, and I also noticed that they were struggling with pursuing the things that they wanted to pursue and just having the grit to go out and get it. So that's why I wanted to write the book. And I didn't have anyone to guide me when it comes to, how do you start a business? How do you brand yourself? How,
Sure.
All of the different things that are going to go through your head, the obstacles that you're going to have, the fears that you're going to face. I didn't have anyone to guide me during those, while I was kind of figuring everything out and going through that and growing up.
I think that's amazing. First of all, extremely mature for your age, to decide to write a book and actually do it, right?
Thank you. It wasn't easy. It's probably the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah. So what would you say, kind of a couple of key takeaways that come out from your book?
Yeah. So like I said, I talk about a lot of different, whether it's my experience, whether it's the advice that celebrities have given me, I talk about all of that throughout the book. But I think some of the key takeaways are my first chapter is you're never too young. You're never too young to start your dreams. You're never too young to start that business, be an entrepreneur, do whatever you want to do. And it goes the other way too. You're never too old to start your business, to go off and do what it is that you want to do. I talk a lot about mindset because I am your mindset is everything. When you're in the right mindset, you're going to do your job better. When you're in the right mindset, you're going to attract and meet the right people. So I talk a lot about that. And my favorite chapter is about the imposter syndrome, which is basically where you've reached a certain level of success. You've reached you achieved that degree in school or whatever it may be. You've achieved a certain level of success, but you don't feel like you deserve it. And I feel like not only do most women struggle with this,
Yes,
but I think a lot of people, because of social media, struggle with any kind of success. It's like, okay, I've earned this. I've worked really hard to achieve this level of success, to get this degree, but I feel like it's not enough. I feel like it's not good enough because you see all of this other stuff on social media, or you talk to your, whatever it may be. So those are probably my favorite takeaways from the book that helped me while I was writing it, but I also know are going to help other people.
Well, I think that's brilliant, by the way, because those 2 points I found myself looking at. In other words, the negative programming. How many times, and I've probably mentioned in a couple other shows, how many times have we heard the word no compared to the word yes? So it's literally mindset, right? We have to go and do intentional practice, intentional work to negate with like the word yes or positive thoughts, and then action comes from that.
Yeah.
I think that's tremendous. And what's also tremendous is what you started. Maybe you could tell us at 11 years old as a radio host. Maybe you want to tell us a little bit about how that happened.
Absolutely. So I play steel drums, and I was getting I would play them around my hometown of Daytona Beach. I started getting interviews by local radio stations because they were like, what is this little kid doing with her steel drums? And I just wanted to play them. I just wanted to play. I had two big double seconds. They were chromed. They were beautiful. Like I loved playing them, and I just wanted to play them somewhere other than my bedroom, you know? So I would go to the beach. Then I started getting gigs at a water park and at the ocean set, you know what I mean? Like different areas around my town. And I started getting these interviews, and one of the radio station managers was like, you should start your own show. You like being in the studio, you sound good on air. And I was like, I'm 11. I don't have a radio voice. Like I had like a high squeaky little voice. And it was the funniest thing. But I started my radio show because of that. And then, you know, within a week, I started doing my interviews because I didn't know how to fill up the time. I was like, I'm 11. I have nothing to talk about. What should I talk about? And then the manager was like, you should do interviews. That's a great way to fill up the time. Yeah. And the next week, Kevin Jonas came to my hometown, which never happens because I'm from Daytona Beach, Florida. Unless you're a NASCAR driver or maybe on vacation, no one really comes through, you know? So I did an interview with him, and that sort of snowballed all of these celebrity interviews, which really took off.
Also, I think it's over 600 interviews, celebrity interviews. I mean, I'm thinking, first of all, how did you book that, right? Like here you are, right? You have this radio show at 11, and all of a sudden you're booking interviews with celebrities. How did that come about?
It was a crazy time. So I had to figure out a lot of things because no one around me knew how to get in touch with a celebrity, you know what I mean? So Kevin Jonas, I did on the fly. I literally just walked into his meet and greet and was like, I have an interview with Kevin Jonas. And his manager was like, you absolutely do not, but I'll give you 5 minutes. And I was like, okay, cool. So that was how that first one happened. Vince Carter, who was my second one, NBA superstar, sure. He has a high school in my hometown. I went to the school. Basically, I just talked to a bunch of different people until I was able to get to the right person. We were able to schedule an interview with Vince. And as far as like all of the others, it's just a matter of like, you know, a little bit of research, you know, whether they write a book, you find the publisher. If they're a recording artist, you go to the label. Like now it's a little bit more different because it's not as cut and dry. You know, people are very independent at this point. There's independent labels, there's independent publishers. So it's a little bit more work, but there's always social media. You can reach out to people on Twitter. So it's just a matter of doing a little bit of research and finding the right person to talk to.
And by the way, you also have a Guinness World Record, right? Yeah. For the most interviews in 24 hours.
No one's broken it yet. And I'm like, that's right. So yeah, it's the most interviews conducted in 24 hours. And I did 347 interviews. Wow. It didn't even feel like that many. Honestly, it really was just an adrenaline rush. The slowest period of time was around like 4 a.m. And that part killed me. Like that was just kind of like, okay, there's no one here. You know, we need to like figure out what to do. But other than that, it was a lot of fun. There was a lot of rules that go into a Guinness World Record. Yeah. It's a very complicated process for sure, but it was worth it. It was a lot of fun.
I mean, you think about that, 347 in a 24-hour period.
Each one had to have 5 questions each, and it couldn't be one-word answers. They had to be at least a sentence long, and I had to ask all unique questions. So I wrote over 2,000 unique questions, and I had them all pre-made to make sure I didn't repeat any, because if they did, that interview was thrown out and it wasn't counted. Same thing if they said just yes, you know, to a question, or if they were like, oh, blue. I don't know. You know what I mean? If they just answered it with one word, then that interview wouldn't be counted. So there's a lot of, and we had to record the entire thing. Yeah, it was a process. It was definitely a crazy endeavor.
And that was in your hometown in Daytona, or that was?
It was. Yeah. I was, I think 14 or 15 when I did it. So wow. I think I did it right before Thanksgiving in front of a Walmart, because it had to be at a location that was open for 24 hours. Everyone's going to Walmart to get all their Thanksgiving stuff. So I was just like, we're going to do it right then to get as many people as possible. Because, you know, there's obviously the shy people that wouldn't want to do it or whatever, but it was awesome. And then I had a lot of friends from my high school come and support and participate as well. So it was a nice little hometown situation.
That sounds like a lot of fun. But also, you also have a podcast, and I love the title, right? If God had a podcast, right? That's what inspired you for that title?
So the title, okay, the mantra or like the goal of the podcast came first, and that is a better you for a better us, because I genuinely believe that when we improve ourselves, we improve as a society. So when I was coming up with the title for the podcast, you know, I could have gone so mainstream. I could have gone so basic and like made it very obvious what the podcast was about. But being the weird abstract person that I like to be sometimes, you know, I was like, well, if we're trying to better ourselves and we're trying to, you know, have self-development, self-improvement, what would God tell us? Like, what would God want us to do in order to have that self-improvement? And that's sort of where the title came about. But then I also thought, well, I'm the God of this podcast. So I was just like, if God had, I don't know, it had a lot of different meanings, but mainly I wanted it to be, you know, here are topics that God would want us to understand, but it has like no religious implications behind it. You know what I mean? Like the podcast is purely self-development, self-improvement. So it's a fun title.
Yeah. No, I love that, because in the end of the day, taking out, I guess, religious dogma, but on a practical level, right? It's like we're humans, how we personally grow and develop. So it's really cool. It's really cool. I'm just thinking about your parents for a second. I mean, they must, right? They're probably super incredible people, and they must have had a big hand in your development and your relationship with them, I assume.
Yeah, I'm very close with my parents, and they are definitely a solid rock for me. My parents, you know, my dad's an immigrant. He's from Lebanon. My mom raised all four of us. I'm number 3 of 4 kids, and each one of us we're so different in each way. Like my older sister is a successful lawyer. My brother is an entrepreneur. I'm in media, but also an entrepreneur. My younger sister is an interior designer. Like we're all very ambitious, driven. And it's just, I think we get that from both of my parents. You know, both my parents are they're a solid rock for all of us, and they support whatever we want to do, but they're also realistic. They're like, you're going to struggle with this. You're not going to get successful right away, or you're going to have these struggles. And I'm really thankful for my parents. I'm really thankful that they rooted us in our beliefs and our morals and what we, you know, want to do, and gave us the confidence to go do it, and the security to know that, you know, family's always there. You know what I mean? Like you can go off into the world and you don't have to be afraid of whatever's going to happen. Like you can always come back to us. We'll be here.
What's resonating with me is the word unconditional love.
That's yes, there you go. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And the other area which I think seems to have developed, which my wife and I would talk about it, is the idea of travel. I know you've traveled a lot, right? So how did that shape kind of your mindset?
I have traveled a lot, and I'm very thankful to have traveled a lot. I've gone to Iceland, Costa Rica, all over Europe. I studied abroad in Germany and that was probably like my most extended period in Europe. And almost every single adventure traveling, you know, I did by myself. So I would just go to all these places alone. I think it's better when you travel alone abroad, you know, as long as you're going to like a safe country. And you feel secure in doing that, you know, it's a very eye-opening experience. And I learn a lot about myself when I travel. I think it's because I'm traveling alone and I don't have like a buddy to go do stuff with. But when I was in Paris and I would just like go to the cafes or a restaurant by myself, it allows you to meet so many people that you normally wouldn't meet if you're in a group or if you're with your family or your friends. And I mean, I love different cultures. I love all cultures. I love experiencing and being able to immerse myself in another country, another culture. So being able to do that is a really, really cool experience. And it's an eye-opening experience. It's a learning a lot about yourself kind of experience. And it's very humbling just to go and see different parts of the world. I think everyone should go travel as much as possible.
Yeah, I agree. I love what travel does for me. You find that wherever you go, in reality, we're all the same. We all like to sit, like you mentioned, the cafe. Sit at the cafe, socialize, connect, go to see some shows, do some stuff, connecting with friends. So it's great. It brings that out. So all these amazing accomplishments, what are your next, what's next for you?
Okay, this is crazy. So I am working on a few different things, but I guess the biggest thing is I turned in my resignation letter to my current job, which I've never done before. So I'm like, it's like a freak out kind of moment because it's such a bungee jump, you know what I mean? But so there's a lot of things to consider, but I'm very excited to finally focus fully on my brand, on my podcast, on the book. It's going to be a whole adventure all in itself. I've never been able to do that. I've always had, before I really got into media and radio, I wanted to be a ballerina. Like that was the road I was heading down. And then once media sort of presented itself as, I was doing well with it, I was like, okay, I'm going to go with this because I have a longer life in it. There's a whole bunch of things. But I always had dance, I had high school, I had college, I had work. COVID happened. So now that we're coming out of COVID, the world's kind of coming back. I am so excited to just put my full force behind my book, my podcast, my brand, work on that and see where it goes.
With pure intention, that should be with tremendous success. And I want to thank you, Pavlina. It's really been a pleasure. How can we learn more about you?
Well, thank you so much for having me on, first of all.
Sure.
And you can follow me on all of my social sites at Pavlina Osta. You can buy the book, 20 Things Every Motivated 20-something Should Know, on pavlinaosta.com. And you can listen to my podcast, If God Had a Podcast, where all podcasts are heard, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify. Go check it out.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Hope you enjoyed this episode of Common Denominator. Join me next week when my guest will be Mike Shorman, aka the Unbalanced Paddleboarder. Mike was a paddleboarding coach until a neurological condition left him with a collapsed face, vertigo, and an inability to walk properly. But through perseverance, he's overcome those obstacles and will soon paddleboard from the US to Canada to raise money for a youth mental health organization. He'll share his story of triumph. Until then, have a great week and we'll talk soon.
Thanks for listening to the Common Denominator podcast. Join us next week for another inspiring, impactful, and empowering conversation. To learn more about Moshe, head to MoshePopack.com. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to share it. And we'd be grateful if you could rate, review, and subscribe to the show.